It is now 6:45 p.m. and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby,
Here.
Mr. Helmer, Ms. Connick,
Here.
Mr. Kurth, here. Ms. Schultz,
Here.
Mr. Seidel,
Here.
Ms. Wondruchek.
Mr. Helmer notified me that he will not be able to make it to tonight's meeting. And I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
Madam President, I move to recess into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, 1C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of August 22nd, B, the employment services report, and that's all.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Seidel. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth,
Yes.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Ms. Schultz,
Yes.
Ms. Wondruchek.
We're moving into closed session and we return to open session around 7 o'clock. It is now 7:01, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all those who are able, please rise. And now for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the City Library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal-Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. And we don't have anybody for privilege of the floor today. All right, then we'll move on to the President's message and announcements. So this is our first school board meeting of the new school year. A warm welcome back to students and staff. We wish you a very successful school year. This is also one of the very last meetings with Diana Hansen before her official retirement. She graciously agreed to stay on to help transition us through the annual meeting, which will be our next meeting. And since we will be so busy with all that is involved with that meeting, we are taking some time tonight to recognize and show our appreciation for all that Diana has done over the many years serving the board. Diana began working for the school district of New Berlin in 1998 in various positions before she was handpicked in 2009 to become the executive assistant to then Superintendent Paul Kreitzer, and continued on with Joe Garza in 2011. During that time, she has acted as the administrative assistant to the school board as well. Many board members have come and gone over that time, and she has been a tremendous help and resource to us all. I have always appreciated her vast knowledge, dependability, her incredible professionalism, and especially her willingness to go beyond what is expected. Diana, I guess we could say you have lived our school motto of expect excellence. I know some of my fellow school board members here would also like to express their appreciation. So now I'll turn over the floor to anyone else who would like to say a few words before we present you with this plaque that will commemorate your time here serving the board. And we also have a gift for you to show you our appreciation, and we wish you all the best in your retirement. So if anybody else would like to say anything, I'll start on this end. I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
No, I just want to echo a lot of what Janet said. You've been very helpful to everybody, and you've welcomed a lot of new board members, and you've always treated everybody great, and you're so helpful, and I just wish you the best in your retirement.
Diana. I didn't prepare anything because I'm not that way. I'm just going to say it off the cuff because you have been absolutely a joy to work with. I always love seeing your smiling face every time I walk in here. Your vast amount of knowledge to what you have brought to every single board that has served basically under you, because you have been sort of the light to lead the way. You've been absolutely fantastic, and I know Ann, you have some big shoes to fill. She's pretty awesome. So good luck in all your future endeavors. Don't drink too much of that wine, and don't forget to invite us over once in a while.
I want to personally thank you for everything you've done for me. Not only when I was on the budget task force, you were always open and just available to me as a resource. And since joining this board, I can't thank you enough. And I just wish you well. And don't be afraid to stop by once in a while. Speak at privilege of the floor. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana. I know I have not been working with you all that long, but I appreciate just one more change. I appreciate it, and enjoy your pontoon.
I would like to say thank you very much. I'm going to scooch my chair so I can look at you. You look like you were going to cry, Diana, which kind of made me a little teary too. I'm just, I'm so grateful. Well, I know. Well, good. That's the whole point. It was supposed to be a surprise, right?
Yes.
So I've been on this board for almost 6 years, and in that time, poor Diana has fielded many of my questions, many of my concerns, many of my, can you just get me more detail on this? Or can you just get me a little more on this? And what about this, Diana? And she has done so with grace, kindness, and thoroughness. And she has pointed me in the right direction on many questions that I've asked. In particular, when I didn't understand open enrollment, she pointed me to Jen Demrow at the DPI, who gave me all kinds of information about how to move forward with that program. We are going to miss you. And I'm just grateful that you stuck with us as long as you did. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors. I'm so glad you're retiring when you have time and energy to enjoy your retirement, because that's the way to do it. And for Anne, I wish you good luck in filling those shoes. I believe in you, and I believe you can do it. But it's gonna be a challenge. So all the best to you, Diana. We will miss you. Thank you.
We love you.
I was wondering if we could possibly gather up front here and hand Diana this plaque, which I'll read to you, in recognition of your retirement, presented to Diana Hansen with great appreciation for exemplary work on behalf of the Board of Education from 2009 to 2022. And we also have a little gift.
Yeah, squeeze in a little bit. All right, ready? All right, thank you, guys.
Oh my goodness, good luck. Enjoy all of those family things.
You know, Diana, that was fun and a bummer all at the same time.
Okay, we'll proceed. We have the administrative team report.
Just a few updates. The first update, as I look over here and we've got flowers, and I don't know if there are any roses in there. It reminds me of the old saying of sometimes you got to stop and smell the roses. And obviously we're doing that, but always with a person like Diana who's worked, I've had the pleasure of working alongside on a day-to-day basis for over 10 years now. You certainly will be missed. And I'm fully confident Anne is going to do an excellent job in her stead. But we also want to, the annual report is something that we do once a year, usually around this time. And what I believe the annual report should be is a celebration of our work from the previous year. And so that annual report, I did share a copy with you. And then I do know that I personally received it in the mail over the weekend, and others have received it already throughout New Berlin. It's actually mailed to every business and home in New Berlin. And there are a lot of incredible things in that report. Particularly of highlight are our student accomplishments, our staff accomplishments, But I also want to commend the school board for the incredible work that the board has done on several fronts. And, one of them is the budget and also our facilities and kind of where we're heading with things. Certainly things have changed. If you look back to 4 years ago, things were a little bit different than in that annual report financially as opposed to what it was what it was this time around. But the board has also made a lot of progress with regard to board policies. I think the committee work is to be commended as well. I mean, I think we're now, once Amy had proposed it way back when, I think we're now kind of hitting our stride and figuring out how those committees are run and how to be effective in those committees as well. But I do think, if you have the chance, I think we all should take a lot of pride in what's in that report because we all had a small part in a lot of that. But obviously don't want to overshadow that things that are happening in our classroom which continue to be excellent things. With that, and as I talk about the facilities and the upgrades that we've made, the board did approve as one of the projects for the work to be done this summer was the drainage issues that we've had at Elmwood School. And quite honestly, those drainage issues was something that was on my list about 16 years ago when I got here, when I was the assistant superintendent of human resources and operations. We just never got around to it. It was on the list, and we didn't, either other things took priority or we didn't have the resources to do it. And after I don't know how many inches of rain we officially got on the south side of New Berlin, maybe 5 to 6 inches of rain, that drainage was put to the test. And what I can say is it worked very well. So it was great to see that the work that was put in, is bearing fruit. We weren't on pins and needles all weekend, keeping an eye on where's that water going to possibly seep in over at Elmwood, and finally able to be addressed. So I think that's great. Unfortunately, the weather over the weekend allowed for some electrical issues, and so we had power outages early this morning that we needed to delay the start over at Orchard Lane, unfortunately. I do want to clarify to the board that there was a delay in making a decision only because we didn't have power. Then at 6:45, we did have power. And then as soon as we were making arrangements to just kind of hit, going forward, because we're working with the bus company, we're working with food service, we're working with, trying to notify the media and all those things. No sooner than we were holding things back, the power went out again. And that occurred, I don't recall, Dave, it was kind of a blur, maybe around 7 o'clock, Patrick. So 7:05 or something like that. So that delayed, that little bit of delay certainly hindered the decision. What I wanted to share with the board is that our goal will always try to be to get kids in school and not have anything be an obstacle, whether it's COVID, whether it's an electrical power outage. We want to make sure that our kids are in school. And, so some of the things that we tossed around, and again, we never got to that point today, but we do have backup plans to possibly relocate students. We certainly would want to keep them in their home school if we can, but we do have space throughout the district to accommodate students as needed, whether it's at other elementary schools and or, like you think about New Berlin West, we've got a performing arts center of 700. We've got a little theater of maybe a couple hundred, and then we've got the entire field house over there as well. So that if we needed to accommodate, I'm not suggesting that that's what we would do, but it's things that we could do. Again, our goal will always be to try and get kids in school, but when the factors varied so quickly, it was very difficult to make a firm decision, and so we went with the delay this morning. I want to just thank the staff and the families for their cooperation and understanding for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The consent agenda is next on the next item up, and that will include the notice and the approval of the minutes of August 12th. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Then do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Kurth. Any discussion? And hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. On to the regular agenda, and we have our employment services update.
So the board had requested that our Director of Employment Services, Nicole Jones, come and speak to the board on a couple of different occasions. And that is now our cadence, actually, that we have Nicole come sometime either in May or June, and then she'll come back this time of year. I do know that we met with the Personnel Committee, so there's a few other things that we are working on, and so we may have another update for you mid-year. But again, I guess we'll consider this the first presentation of this new school year from Nicole.
Sure. And so this one is going to be focused primarily on our retention, some of our exit interview data, and then as well as an update on our compensation model results. As we know, we do portfolios annually. And then finally, give you a little preview of what we're working on this year in response to some of that feedback that we've gotten from our staff. So to begin, we're looking at our voluntary resignation. So these are folks who have either retired or they've left out of choice. And so I put together the, going back to kind of when I came into the position at 15, 16. So this is all the data we've collected over the many years. You can kind of see, looking at this, that our turnover was definitely lower during those COVID years. I'd say this year was maybe more similar to what we've experienced in the past, but also lower than what we've had in the past. So we're still very pleased about that. One of the things that I started on this one in particular was, I think back in winter, there had been some stories, just news stories about how we might see a lot more career changers in the education field, given the stress of the pandemic and things of that nature. And certainly for us, this was true. And not all of them are leaving education necessarily, but certainly they're looking at going into counseling or some of the other fields in education, administrators and whatnot. So that's all lumped in there too. But you can see our highest area for us this year were actually career changers. And then our overall total, including the 6 retirements, was 27 in terms of voluntary turnover. And then here on this slide, we like to track also how we're comparing to our peers. And again, we were fairly pleased to see, like over the last several years, that we've really been trending below average in terms of turnover. And we're just a hair below average, again, for this past school year. So the local average, it's kind of weird looking on that slide, but the local average was 7.1% turnover. And our turnover for this year was 6.9. So very similar to the average, slightly below it. But we did see, like a lot of other districts outside of New Berlin did see quite the uptick comparatively for them with turnover, some of them in the 10 to 12% range. So again, still very happy with this number and where we're at. And then for those that leave us, whether they're classified staff, whether they are licensed staff, we do try to, we attempt to do exit interviews with them. Some of them are happy to sit down with us and do that, and others just really want to get out or have just ready to move on. This year we did do a new format in an attempt to get more participation, because sometimes scheduling those face-to-face or during COVID, it was kind of those virtual interviews. It didn't work for everybody. So this year we offered them the option of doing either a survey that we sent out through our new survey platform, which is Qualtrics. We used that for our culture survey this past spring. The alternative was if they didn't want to do the survey, they weren't comfortable with that, I would schedule a meeting and sit down with them and do the exit interview in person. So they were given both options. All of them went with the survey this year. So, but we try to be, I guess, UDL, if you will, with our surveys. So again, the data includes licensed and support staff. We are able to see, unlike our culture climate survey data, for the exit interviews, we can see individual responses. So if we want to dig into it further, we can go and look at, where's the person coming from? Who was this particular person? If we wanted to respond to them, we can do that. We won't be showing that here, the individual responses. It's broken down, kind of averaged together. But again, what's nice about this survey through this platform, it's better analytics. We can do more customizations with it. We just get really clean, nice data in this format. So we've been pretty happy with it to date. And then year over year, we'll be able to compare this data to what we get with future exit interview surveys. So our first piece was a main reason for leaving, which you already kind of saw, at least for licensed educators on an earlier slide. But this, again, is inclusive of both licensed educators and our support staff. So I'll just let you kind of look that over. And again, for the other, some of them were able to kind of specify what that other meant for them. Then how well did the role fit your skill set? Overall, people felt that the role was appropriate for them. So positive data there. How reasonable or unreasonable was the workload? Again, a little more than 50% found it to be reasonable. How accurately was the role described? So did you know what you were getting into before you signed up? So we're doing a good job clearly communicating out our job descriptions, our job expectations for the role. How good or bad was the overall quality of the physical environment you were working in? Generally, with the exception of one response, really pretty good. The schools, they're clean, they're maintained, they have a good physical space, and I'd love to talk to anybody who wants to ask me about number one, outside. It's a funny thing. Generally good. How fairly, unfairly do you think the district treats its employees? Again, overall, positive responses in terms of how we're respecting our staff and supporting them. How fair did you feel your total compensation package was? In terms of total comp, I think, the scores were fairly decent, with moderately fair being the top response. Now, what we're going to see on the next slide is much more reflective of what we saw in the spring in relation to pay. So do you feel that your pay matched your performance in this role? So we're seeing an overwhelming no. Again, this is very similar to some of the feedback that we collected from all staff in the spring regarding our compensation structure. How good or bad was your experience working for SDNB? This was a really, again, really good data here, really good feedback, I should say. Generally, those who are leaving us are not leaving wanting to really cut and run, and they had a good experience. Hopefully they leave us and they're going out and they're sharing that with others, that it was a positive place to work. So then this next couple of slides is related to our compensation plan. As you're aware, or as you should be aware, we do a portfolio every year. We have a group of teachers who, in their third year of their evaluation cycle, what's called their summary year, they're able to submit a portfolio if they so choose. The portfolio is broken up into categories based on leadership, collaboration, professional growth, and then how you're implementing our district initiatives such as UDL, Universal Design for Learning, technological literacy, and so forth. So here's a breakdown. We had 46 total submissions this year. That was about 44% of those eligible in the summary year. Again, very similar, maybe even a little bit higher than in past years in terms of the submission rate for this year. You can see where the various portfolios came from. And then how they scored. So 85% of those who submitted a portfolio this year earned the salary increase, the highest salary increase, which was, I believe, a $3,000 increase to their pay. 9% were mid-tier, which was a $1,500 increase, and 6% earned the lowest tier, about a $750 increase to their salary. And again, this is done every 3 years, that they can submit their portfolio for that increase. And then this is kind of a preview of the things that we are really focused on based on the feedback that we gathered both in the spring as well as through our exit survey data. So one of the biggest pain points, I guess, from our spring survey, and again reflected in the exit interviews, had to do with our compensation model, which is somewhat tied, well, very much tied to our evaluation as well. So we are actually going to be partnering with NIET. Probably Kelly or Joe would be better suited to talk to you about NIET as an organization on the whole. But we're very excited about a new partnership with NIET. We're going to be looking at what's called the TAP system. It's a new evaluation model in which teachers are evaluated every year. So they're receiving really rich feedback every year. We think it's going to be much more rigorous, more robust than any model that's being currently used in the state. And we're most likely the first in the state, I believe, to be using this system. It is used outside of our state. We're really excited to be leading the way as we do in many things on this model, and hopefully we can become a model for our peers through this partnership. But with that, it does have a compensation structure based on student growth and achievement, and also tied into teacher evaluations. We're also, as we do every year, looking at local compensation. So as we, in late winter, midwinter, I should say, we'll be pulling that data again once it becomes available. Teacher pay data, pay for classified staff, pulling that all together, analyzing it, looking to see, are we keeping up? Where do we stand in terms of our competitiveness with our peers in the market? And then we are working with our benefit consultants, USI. We've engaged in 3 meetings so far this summer regarding strategic planning for our benefit structure, so kind of that total compensation discussion. And we brought in teachers from our district to discuss and kind of give them an overview and education on our benefit plans. And then we'll be moving forward with trying to discuss, what are our staff looking for in terms of their benefits? What do we need to revise, edit, add, delete, that sort of thing? What education is needed? Then benefit reviews. We are also looking, researching between our peers and a lot of other districts are looking at some alternatives to a traditional retirement benefit structure. For example, doing a health retirement benefit rather than, offering X years on our insurance plan. We believe it could be a win-win with some fairly good cost savings across the board. So we are researching that. Continuing to engage with our staff, collecting feedback, monthly check-ins, and then with our new hires, just planning better, making sure that we're checking in with our new hires 30, 60 days, 90 days, making sure that they have what they need, how they're feeling. We know that we get into the middle of the school year and it can be pretty overwhelming. So making sure that we're reaching out to them to make sure that they're supported. So that's what we're looking at going into this school year.
We shared this information with the Personnel Committee. We refined the presentation based on questions the committee members had. Anything else the committee would like to add based on the presentation? Other than I think that last slide that you had are the things that actually, several of those things are the things that the committee will be working on, and I believe you'll be sharing kind of an update from the Personnel Committee that'll coincide with what Nicole just shared.
Sure.
That stated other, and it said specify. What kind of response did you get from that?
I could probably get back to you on it.
No, that's fine. I'm not really
Yeah,
looking for.
they might have been more like I'm retiring, or some folks they actually, might have left for, related to just some environmental challenges or issues with their own physical ability and working in the position.
Okay.
So some of those points.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Sure.
You don't really need to respond. I was just curious if there's anything like just kind of
Nothing
out.
nothing that really like leapt off the page, but some things that is,
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
Now we just have some committee updates. We have on the schedule here Facilities Committee update, but Mr. Helmer was unable to be here this evening, so I don't know if another member of his committee would want to just sort of give a overview of what was discussed at the meeting. All right, go ahead, Ms. Connick.
Yeah, Mitch did ask me to just give a few brief updates. For the Facilities Committee, Patrick and Andy gave us a presentation, a thorough presentation on the long-range facilities plan, where we stand in the district, and what our priorities and projects are for the next number of years. Those projects, as well as the rental system and our sponsorship program, were discussed. Patrick will be posting the spreadsheet that he was working off of, and our next meeting, I believe, is still to be determined. I don't know if Jeff has anything else to add. He was also at the meeting.
All right, thank you. Then we have the Finance Committee update.
Okay, since my last update, and thanks to our super CFO, we updated multiple policies up to and including 5830s for the, there was some reference to 9700, which that was also updated. 6605 crowdfunding and the 6110 federal funds. We are meeting usually about once a month, every other month. Our next meeting will more than likely be with the annual meeting. It'll end up being in October, where we'll review financial statements. At our last meeting, we discussed the preliminary budget at length for what will be presented to the public at our annual meeting. And first of all, I want to thank Amy for her time on the committee. Welcome, Janet. And Chrislyn, it's always a pleasure having you there. So unless any other committee member has anything to add, that would end my report.
All right, then we have the Personnel Committee update.
The Personnel Committee had our first meeting on August 15th, during which we discussed our objectives for this year. Our main focus will be to support our Board of Education goal number 2, to increase job satisfaction and make sure the school district is an attractive employer. During our meeting, Nicole gave the presentation that she just gave to us, as well as we discussed some of the employee survey results, as well as some of the benefits and the bonus structure that was rolled out last meeting. Our next meeting will be November 14th.
Great, and I should add to that, I mistakenly, during the voting for the bonus last time, I told everybody during closed session, oh, we don't need a second, because the committee already is referring this to the whole board, and then totally forgot once we were in the meeting and took a second. So I didn't give credit during that last meeting to the Personnel Committee. So I just want to clarify that the Personnel Committee did approve it for the full board to go to the full board. And so I want to make sure that the committee gets that credit for that. Okay, if there's not anything else with the Personnel Committee, any questions? All right, then we'll go on to our first read for a policy, use of district facilities, policy 7510. Are there any questions right now?
I did just want to share a few things that this is a first read. We're not seeking your approval tonight. We will be having a brief regular meeting after the budget hearing and annual meeting at the next meeting, which we typically do. I know that Janet may be calling in to that meeting. But I did want to just clarify that the purpose for us bringing these recommended minimal changes is so that we can move forward with a venture that we've been exploring for the last couple of years. So there were two goals that were brought forth by the board that I recall specifically that were actually initiated by the Budget Balancing Task Force. I don't know, 4 years ago now, 3 years ago. And then they were brought to the full board. I remember Amy, as board president at the time, coordinated with the board on what our priorities should be based on some of those items. A couple of those key items that the board tasked administration with were, one, facility usage increase, and then two, like sponsorships for our facilities. I'm happy to announce that we've actually engaged in additional sponsorships. We're still affirming those as we speak. We actually have had great conversations even as of last week, and I hope to bring those for approval to the board at an upcoming meeting. But then the other thing too was that we are looking to do something different with our facilities, namely at our various theaters and Performing Arts Center at New Berlin West. In the annual report, the back page, we announced that we will be having 2 shows coming to New Berlin West. The Whiskey Bells will be performing in October, and then Pat McCurdy will be performing in November. And we're trying to have that venue be a venue that's just beyond school-related items, but also an opportunity for our education foundation to host fundraisers. And so as we're looking into this venture, it'll be our first time going into it. But some of the things that we're looking at is actually having sponsorships for the performers so that literally most of the ticket sales will be basically donations to the foundation, which in turn, comes back to the school district. But one of the pieces that the board had asked us about that we had mentioned to the board that we believe we could be doing is alcohol sales at these events. And so what us, in speaking to our legal counsel, we needed to make these necessary changes to the policy itself. We are happy to provide the details of those guidelines should you see, in fact, we'll provide them to you before the next meeting. That kind of just gives the lowdown of how it will actually work. Essentially, it's not, I just want to clarify, it's not going to be willy-nilly. Anybody and everybody can come and sell alcohol on school grounds. It will actually be basically events sponsored by the Education Foundation of New Berlin. And then through the Education Foundation of New Berlin, we actually work with the city of New Berlin to get, so I liken it to, how many of you have been to Holy Apostles Festival? How many of you have been to the Seton Fest? We are doing something similar. We're trying it in a much smaller capacity, where we would get temporary alcohol licenses from the city, which have actually been approved for those 2 events, pending the board's approval of these policy changes. So again, that is the purpose behind our recommendations to make adjustments to the policy itself. Yes, sir.
Just one question, real quick, based on something you just said. Would we need to have a licensed bartender on staff?
We do.
Okay.
And happy to say that we actually have several employees that needed to be licensed for the 4th of July fundraiser that we did. So our very own Patrick Miller and Julie Cordero, who is now an employee of the school district, who runs the foundation and backfilling for Ann, who's moved over into this role. She is also as well.
Perfect. That's all I needed to hear.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you have any additional questions between now and the next meeting, please let me know. I'll be happy to post the guidelines. Patrick, if we can share that with Ann to include in the packet for the next meeting, that would be great.
Okay, then we have action on items discussed in closed sessions. Closed session, we do have one item.
I'd like to move to approve the employment services report as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Seidel to approve. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. Then we have our future meetings and dates. Board meetings are generally held the second and fourth Mondays beginning at 7:00 p.m. in the Eisenhower Commons unless noted otherwise. Next meeting is Monday, September 26th, and that's immediately following the annual meeting. Also Wednesday, October 12th, and Monday, October 24th. And just a reminder, that other important event date is the budget hearing and annual meeting is held on that Monday, September 26th, prior to the regular meeting. And as Mr. Garza mentioned, I will not be in person at that meeting. Mr. Helmer will be facilitating those meetings, and I will hopefully be able to call in. Then, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Seidel to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your right hand. The motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.